the suspect.
All right, so we're back. We had to take a little bathroom break. So you said, where did we leave off?
So we left off where we're kind of cornering Keoki on some lies, right? We caught him lying. He didn't tell us about the Cash App. He's deleting text messages. He's putting himself in contact with the victim, the last person to come in contact. So what we did now, this is March 3rd now. We got involved on the 1st, 2 days later. We asked him to come down and do an interview. We're like, hey, man, come talk to us. There's a lot of things that point to that maybe you were with her or you don't know where she's at. Just come chat with us.
So right now, if he just said, no, I don't want to come chat, what would happen?
Nothing. Yeah, he was completely free to go. Like I told you, man, the odd thing was he was so forthcoming. He was like, absolutely, I'll come down there and talk to you guys. And we told him, look, you're free to go at any point. You don't have to talk to us. You can do whatever you want, man. Did
he have any family friends down here?
No, he didn't have any family or friends down here that we knew of at the time. We knew he had a mother. I think it was in North Florida.
Okay.
And we weren't too sure about a father at that time.
Interesting. So he came down.
He came down. We actually brought him down. He didn't have a car, so we went, picked him up, and he came down to the office.
And was he acting normal? Was everything was cool?
Normal as he could be. I mean, he was an odd guy to begin with, but he was really nice and came down and knew we were going to talk to him. So the reason we brought him down is because we want to have these interviews here at the office in our interview rooms. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And we want to make sure they're on recording. We want to make sure that we don't miss anything. So a lot of the information that he had told us, we kind of went over it again, see if it changes, you know?
Right, because, if you're telling the truth, the story shouldn't change.
Story should not change. Story should stay pretty much the same.
Now, did his story change at all, or was it?
I mean, he did change initially. He said that he told us initially that she only paid him in cash.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
And now he's like, oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you about that Cash App transaction because I was scared. I was scared that it was going to make me look bad.
Okay. I mean, it kind of did make him look bad. So, I mean.
It makes sense. I mean, you could see why people would say something like that, right?
And he does have a criminal history, so he's probably already scared enough of like, hey, this girl's missing. I was the last one to see her.
Right.
You already dealt with that. So, and now in the interview room, how'd that go?
That was fine. I mean, that's like our first initial interview with him, and he did not, he didn't flinch about it. We did notice also when we were going through his phone that he had Lyft and Uber. So that was another avenue for us to start looking at things. We're like, you know what, man? He doesn't have a car, so he probably has a history taking Uber and Lyfts. He admitted to that to us when we talked to him initially, like, yeah, I take Lyft, Ubers, whatever. So we decided to do subpoenas on his Lyft account.
Okay. Anything suspicious on that?
Not initially. That takes a little while, right? That takes a few days to come back. So I think we put a rush on everything we did. Now we put a rush on it because it's like, okay, something's up. Because when we no longer felt like she just left, like an adult who just decides they want a couple days away from everybody. Why? Her wallet, her bank cards, her ID.
Right.
All this stuff is at her house.
Especially if she posts every single day.
And is not reaching out to anybody, not a soul, not any of her friends. Like, hey, just give you a heads up.
Yeah.
I'm going to be gone for a few days. Don't worry about me. We're good.
Suspicious. So
100%.
So now, how many times did you guys interview him?
We interviewed him once at the house.
Okay.
He gave us the phone, and this is a first official interview here at the office, here with us or whatever.
And still at this the second interview at the office, still nothing, no red flags.
No red flags other than maybe he's lying about where she's at, right? Mm-hmm. Because again, we didn't find her car. Now you're talking about
right. Like you said, or we said before, they've known each other for 8 years. So I've known you for 15 years or so.
Yeah.
And if I had said, hey, I just wanted to get out of town,
don't tell anybody.
Don't tell anybody.
Yeah. We're not going to tell anybody.
We're not going to tell anybody.
You're an adult. As long as I'm not concerned for your safety or whatever, I'm not saying anything.
Right. So, I mean, that would be in the back of my head of, they've known each other for so long. Maybe he's just covering for her. But, once again, if she leaves her ID behind and the phone.
Yeah, that's where it starts getting weird. Yeah, what's going on, right?
Even if I told you, yo, Rubes, I'm gonna dip out, I'm still gonna take my ID just in case if I need to get anything, get gas or get carded. So yeah, that is pretty suspicious. So after he left the interview, after the first or the second one when he was here, what was like kind of like the next step? So right now there's no other suspects.
We're not holding him for anything.
Right.
We actually take him home. No big deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we still are like, okay, we got to move fast because we don't know what he's going to do. Once you start catching somebody in a bunch of lies and their story's starting to fall apart, they could freak out, right? A lot of people will see if we don't have enough to take them into custody there or charge them, they will disappear, right? Mm-hmm. And now all the lies are kind of starting to come out. He broke his phone. He says that the reason there's messages missing is because that's when he broke his phone, right? We had questioned him. There was some other questions about work and if he had gone to work, and we knew he had not gone to work, and he is telling us that he did go to work.
So now things are starting not to add up.
Not to add up, right? So that situation about him going to work, not going to work, was because, yes, indeed, he did go buy a phone that morning that he didn't show up to work, which was, I believe, the morning of the 25th.
Okay.
The day after she disappeared. However, we did notice when we went to, talk to the clerks and talk to some people, we noticed that he paid in cash for a brand new phone. It was like $900. This man doesn't, he's not abundantly rich, or that's pretty hard for a normal person to do, is pay cash for a brand new phone.
Right. So he must have got it somewhere.
So we're just kind of trying to figure out what's going on. We figured maybe he took the Cash App money, transferred into his bank account, which again, we were going to try to verify, but we can't because things take time, right, to get that information. So
at this time, like, Cynthia basically just kind of almost vanished.
She is completely vanished.
Still haven't found her car?
Still have not found her car.
So that must give you some hope that maybe she's somewhere in her car. Maybe she's driving somewhere.
Correct.
She just said,
yeah. We hope that she shows up and she's like, hey, guys, I just had to go out of town for a little while to clear my head or whatever, or visit some family. But and then things started taking a turn for the worse, because now we knew that something was up. On the 4th, we actually found her car.
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
We found her car parked
in a different state, or
no? We found her car locally here in Stewart. So we started backtracking, trying to figure out where her car is, because we knew a few things. We knew her phone pinged pretty close to where Keoki Demick lives, which is an area known as downtown Stewart.
Okay.
We knew that he was the last one to talk to her at 2 a.m. through the Cash App transaction and that text message of, hey, I sent you money, right? So we had guys and gals, detectives canvassing the area, and finally we found her car. It was actually at the Kingdom Recovery parking lot under a tree. And
the Kingdom Recovery is where he used to live?
No,
where he lives.
That's where they go for their meetings. That's where they met.
That's where they met. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a familiar location for her.
100%. Still not odd.
Right.
But that car, but what we noticed is that car's been sitting there for a while. There's pollen collected all over it. Dust. It's dusty now. So if you figured, let's say she disappeared on the 24th, 25th. You're talking about the 4th now. You're talking about almost 9 days later. Right.
It is very suspicious. But that is her comfort zone. She's comfortable there.
And we thought about that. So that kind of still turned the investigation again a little bit, because we were like, maybe she disappeared with someone from the Kingdom Recovery that she, didn't tell anybody about. Right. So
yeah.
She could have done that and took a hiatus, whatever.
All right. So now we have you found her car. She's missing. Keoki. That's his name is Keoki. Keoki. He's becoming a little suspicious, but still, I mean, doesn't mean
he killed her. It doesn't mean he did anything like that.
Correct.
Right?
And you checked his room, you checked his house, you checked everything.
Right.
Okay. So now what's the
next step?
Yeah.
Next step again. It's like things start to play out in an investigation. Man, it's like a roller coaster, right? Mm-hmm. You start off really slow, and everything's starting to point in one direction. And as you get to the peak, that could change rapidly, right? It could change for the better, worse, whatever. You can get your answers. You may not get your answers. So what we decided to do is we went back. Once we found her car, we're like, we got to go back to her house and see if there's something that we are missing. Right? Are we missing something at her house?
Real quick, when you guys went the first time, was the doors were locked, windows were locked?
Everything was locked up.
Okay.
Everything. You couldn't even get into the house. There was only one place to get into the house, which was the back patio screen door.
Okay.
I had noticed that there was a hole cut where you could unlock the screen door from the outside.
Okay.
So I was like, that's odd, but maybe she just left it like that in case she ever locked herself out, right? Or whatever.
Right.
As we're walking around, I'm noticing some weird things. Like in the back right corner of the house, I see a shovel with some fresh dirt dug up.
Okay.
I'm starting to think like, okay, what if someone did murder her? Not saying it was Keoki, but what if someone did murder her and they buried her in her own yard? So we're walking around.
Interesting.
Doing a lot of things there. I send more detectives back to the house to kind of go through it again, right? We're going through her yard. We're going through her paperwork. We're going through her medication. We're going through anything that we could find that could give us a possible lead onto where she's at. So
right now, the only thing I really was, I guess not weird, but it stood out was just some dirt on a shovel, fresh dirt on a shovel.
yeah, and especially after we found her car, we were like, okay, something's gonna have to tell us why she parked the car there, why what she's doing there, where we're going. I mean, we're crossing off every lead, man. We're checking her internet connection, her Wi-Fi connection, see if a phone connected to her your Wi-Fi or whatever.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
did she have like flowers, plants? Maybe. I mean, she used that to.
no, yeah, she definitely has plants. However, this was fresh dirt.
Okay.
This was just a few days old, right? We got involved on the 1st. This is the 4th, 3 days later. And we're like, we didn't see that the time before, but let's keep looking. Let's look around the area.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to hand it to this detective, man. This detective was walking around there.
Well, let me interrupt you real quick. Just so the first time you went to do a welfare check, was a shovel there?
Yeah, but I don't think we noticed it, right?
Okay.
We just noticed what was inside. We're just looking for an
person,
adult
yeah.
who's missing right
Okay.
now, and there's no indications of anything going on that's foul play.
Okay.
When we find the car, that kind of turns things for us because we have a lot more now to go on. We know she's not in her car.
Mm-hmm.
We know she left all her belongings, and by this time, we know there is no transactions from her phone to Keoki, to anybody, to her banks. There's nothing. It's because she's completely off the grid, right? So if she's not in her car, we got to try to figure out who she's with. So we're going back to look for like any real substantial clues. At this point, there's two theories going on. Either A, I'll be honest with you, we thought Keoki did something to her because of the phone locations, the Cash App, him saying he's the last person to see her,
Buying a new phone with cash.
telling lies, saying he went to work when he really didn't go to work.
Why would he lie about that?
Because his story is unraveling.
Well, that's,
and what happens is when you lie, what happens, man? You forget what lies you tell sometimes, right? So we talked to his boss, and he's like, nah, he didn't even show up to work that day. We confronted him on that, and he's like, oh, it's because I went to the store because I broke my phone, this, that, and the other. So things aren't adding up.
Starting to sound sketchy.
Okay. And then we find the car. And then obviously at this point, there's just so much data coming in at this time that it's kind of, it's taking it piece by piece. So at the same time that we have detectives back at our house kind of looking around during the daylight so we can see, you know what I mean? We find video of what looks like a male matching Keoki's description walking away from the car at like 6 a.m. So now we're thinking it's going to be a little bit. We got to focus more on Keoki.
No, it was a surveillance camera from
It was a local,
business?
adjacent local business, and it wasn't the best video. It was just kind of like some grainy footage of a male walking towards the direction of the vehicle,
and it looked like Keoki.
Tall, big afro. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And he's pretty distinct looking. The guy's
Okay.
6'4" with an afro.
And we're gonna show a picture right here. So if you're listening to this, we're going to do it on our YouTube as well, so you can see the picture of him as well. So when you asked him where the car was prior to you finding the van, he said no idea, correct?
He had no idea. He had no clue. He had been in the vehicle only when she picked him up and drove him.
Okay,
never drove the car, never nothing, right?
So any of his DNA, if it was found in there, that's normal because he was already in the car.
He's already admitted to being in the vehicle, so that wouldn't have done anything for us anyway, to be honest with you.
Okay.
So then at this same time, we're getting, more information. I'm sending detectives back over. They were just kind of rehashing that out. And, one of the detectives is walking around the yard and notices that there's a screw missing on one of the lids for the septic tank. Now, let me describe this for you, right?
Okay. So, I live now in South Florida. We don't have septic tanks. So
For those that don't have septic tanks, a septic tank is obviously a receptacle that is buried under your house that collects all your waste from your bathrooms. Anything you flush, it goes down in there. Now you guys can imagine what's in there.
Right.
It's full of human feces, urine, and just as much nasty stuff as you can think. So, and the lid that covers that is usually a big green lid. It's pretty obvious. It's like a big hole in the middle of your yard covered by a big plastic lid, whatever color it may be.
And that's where they drain it?
That's where they open it to kind of like fix it if it needs to be fixed. It drains from your toilets.
Right, but I'm saying when they empty the septic tank, like when a truck comes.
Yeah, they could come in there and pump it out from that lid or whatever.
Okay, was there any evidence that she had to get it cleaned or drained?
No, not that we know of. And normally that doesn't happen too frequently. When it's a old septic like that, it takes a while for you to have to actually do that. So my detective, big shout out to him, Detective Ishmael Howe, a good wherewithal. He looked and noticed that most of the screws were rusty, but a few looked like they had been broken loose. Some didn't even have the screws back on it, right? Okay. So obviously it had been tampered with. And funny story is when he kind of remembered something that he saw, and something inside his stomach just said, hey, man, lift that up and check. Because you know what? You never know what people are thinking, what's going on. So I remember being here at the office, kind of thinking, what steps we're going to take through. And that was probably the craziest phone call I ever got, man. We heard they found her.
Wow.
Yeah. So they said they found her. I said, what do you mean they found her? I'm initially thinking, someone saw her at the store. Right? I'm like, what do you mean they found her? They're like, well, Detective Howe lifted up the septic tank lid and saw a human body at the bottom of the tank, which is absolutely unheard of and wild. So, at this point, we don't know if it's her, but there is a human body in the septic tank of Cynthia Cole's house, right?
So you found a body on a missing person's property.
All right, so we open up the lid, and you can see clearly at the bottom that there's a human body at the bottom of this septic tank.
So let's just backtrack. If those screws were not loosened, would any suspicion to check in there?
We probably would have never checked in there. I would venture to say that this is maybe one of 1 million cases, maybe, where you would have to hear something. I personally have been doing this for 18 years. I've never heard of anything like this, of somebody shoving somebody's body in a septic tank. So
before we move on, let's just say the screws were never loosened, and you guys never even thought about that.
This case would have remained unsolved.
So the house would have been sold, I would have assumed.
Maybe at some point,
Right, and then at some point when they have to drain the septic tank.
Listen, with that body being in there, let's say somebody started flushing the toilet or running the water.
Right.
You would have noticed something was up.
A smell?
A smell. It would have started smelling in towards the house. It would have started, getting clogged and draining into the yard. It would have been bad. Okay, so
sooner or later, she probably would have been found. It could have been 10 years from now, but a stench.
Yeah, something would have happened.
So now, how big is the hole?
So Cynthia Cole was about 5'5", 5'6".
Okay.
Thin build. She was not thin. She was not a big lady. I'm sorry.
Okay.
She was pretty average, smaller framed woman. That hole is about, I would say, 3 foot wide in diameter. So you figure a 3 foot hole all the way around.
Okay.
And it is about 10 foot deep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And now, not to get too graphic or whatnot, when you guys opened it up, was it decomposing or?
Yeah, you could tell that it started to float up. It was a little bloated. I'm never going to forget that, right? So you walk up, the lid's opened up, you look down this hole, and it's just you can't even imagine it, right? It's a human body floating in a body of water that is nothing but feces, trash, dirt. And you could clearly see that it was the torso. That's all you could see is her torso and her arms. Mm-hmm. Her head was still kind of down in the water. It's actually, honestly, man, it's one of those things that you never forget because, murder is murder. It doesn't make it any easier any way you want to paint it. But to dispose of somebody in the most disrespectful and cruel and just unhumane way you could possibly do it, I would say would have to be something like that.
So, I mean, this is even hard to talk about, but right now her body is basically just in feces.
Yeah. Urine, feces, trash, whatever he could throw in there. Horrible way.
Now, when you I guess took the body out
at some point, I mean, that was
what was the next step? Yeah.
Right? So after that, we got very lucky about a few things, man. His lift subpoenas came back.
Okay.
And wouldn't you know it, Keoki got a lift on that night of the 24th that she went missing up to Cynthia Cole's house.
Now, did you find this prior to finding the body?
Almost simultaneously. Okay. Yeah. So like I told you, man, sometimes it's just one of those things that starts happening and things start unraveling. So we found her car, found her body, and got the subpoena back.
I have the chills.
Yeah.
The chills right
now.
It's
it's nuts.
So now it's starting to look more of a suspect. Now you have a body. Now what's the next step? Do you remove the body, or do you interview Keoki?
So right now we're just going to collect all our evidence, right? We don't want to give up what we have because we don't want him to take off. We know where he's at. He's being cooperative. At this point, he may think we don't know anything, right? And even still, it doesn't say, hey, I killed her. This is still a very circumstantial case, right? We have evidence that says he was there the night. We have her body, but we don't have a scene. We don't have a crime scene. It's not like the house, there was blood everywhere. The house was pretty clean.
Interesting. So, I mean, did it ever cross your mind that? No, I'm just going through the scenarios that maybe her drains were clogged, and she went into the septic tank herself to basically kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that would make sense if she had clothes on. She was nude.
She was nude.
Yeah.
Wow.
She was completely naked, no clothes. So obviously she didn't do that to herself. You know
right. You're not going to go into a septic tank.
And then close the lid behind you. Yeah, no, that's not going to happen. That was at this point. This case is a murder investigation, right? And as quickly as we were moving, we actually have to pump the brakes a little bit here because it's like,
wow,
you know.
So at this point, since the screws were tightened, there's absolutely no way she could have climbed in there herself. So someone must have put her in there and tightened up the screws. And took her clothes off at some point.
Took her clothes off. So now we don't have her clothes. It also turned out that the phone we found there was an old phone. It wasn't even. They had no service. It was her phone.
Okay.
But they had no service. So now we're like, okay, her phone is missing. Also, we know it was active because we have her location last at near the Kingdom Recovery where we found her car.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, once you take the body out, was there any bruising, stab wounds, shotgun wounds?
Honestly, man, that's a whole process in itself, man, that I'm never gonna forget, man. Honestly, this is it was one of those cases where you're never gonna forget that because we had to basically tear down her fence, bring in heavy equipment, dig out her entire front yard, remove a several hundred, if not thousands pound concrete lid.
Is there a reason why you can just take her out of the septic tank?
Yeah, it's too deep and too narrow. So you can't just pull her out. It's 10 foot deep. You would risk damaging the body or whatever you may have or losing any kind of evidence. So we had to physically remove, and that's again kudos to our crime scene technicians, man. If it wasn't for them, I don't even know how we would have got that body out of there, right? We were able to use heavy machinery to lift this big lid, and I'll have to get you a picture of it so you see it, man.
So I'll get the picture from you and we'll put it on our YouTube. So we won't show the body obviously, but we'll just show
the work. It was like manual labor to get this out. Like there's no way you're doing it without. Just picture a giant concrete box full of water and feces, and you have to remove the lid from the top. That's what we had to do to get this, to recover Cynthia Cole's body out of her house.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, while you were recovering the body, Was there another interview with Keoki or right now?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Like again, we're telling you, we're gonna go ahead and collect all the evidence we have,
Probably,
because we're not gonna go back in there and give him any opportunity to lie to us if he did do something, right?
So when you got the body out, or when the body came out, any wounds?
Not initially, man. The body was so decomposed and so bloated that it was very, very difficult to tell. At that point, it was going to be something where the medical examiner would have to tell us what was going on with her. Simultaneously, though, I will tell you that the sun had come down. We had been probably working this for 2 or 3 days now, consistently in a row. And we decided to do a luminol check of her residence.
So what's a luminol check exactly?
So for those who don't know, luminol will highlight blood stains. Even if you've cleaned it up, it'll bring it out. Like if it's on the wall and you wiped it off, it'll bring it out. It'll make it glow. It's almost like a chemical that turns blood into a night. Like you hit it with a black light and you're gonna see it. Right?
Okay, so even with bleach,
wow. Whatever you have. Okay. So we did that, and to our surprise, and like we kind of knew this was gonna happen, is we found a footprint. That had been a bloody footprint.
Wow. So
we found some smears on the wall. And
this whole time, you guys been in this house twice now, or actually 3 times at this point.
This was their 3rd time.
First time to do a welfare check, and little did you know there was blood prints that you could not see.
Yeah, you can't see them. You can't with these prints. You cannot see with the naked eye.
Right, and then the second time you walked in there, you saw the shovel. Little did you know there was blood all over the walls.
Yeah, and so when the second time we went into it, it was daytime. So when you do a luminol. When you luminol a residence or any piece of property or wall or carpet, it has to be completely pitch black. So you have to wait till nighttime, till it's dark outside.
Gotcha.
You can't just do it in the middle of the day. You're not going to see anything. You know what I mean? So then we saw right around the door frame that there was like a smear that, this only reacts to blood.
Right.
So we know now there was blood. In this house, there were some smear marks along the floor. We know now that in this house that something happened
and somebody
to Cynthia,
cleaned it up.
And somebody cleaned it up.
Right.
And did a really good job at cleaning it up.
Wow. So at this point, so there's blood in the house. So obviously, you're leaning towards more that she was probably murdered in the house. Is that kind of accurate? Point. There's blood in the house. Yeah. She was probably murdered in the house.
Yeah. It all points to that there was something that happened in the house where she was murdered. Now I will tell you that I'm no doctor, right? But I've seen my fair share of decomposed or murdered bodies or dead bodies, and this was definitely one where we couldn't really tell what happened to her because of the decomp.
Horrible.
But we don't know what was going on at that situation, right? We would hope at that point that she was probably dead when she got tossed in there.
You would hope so. I mean,
yeah, so that was kind of what we were hoping for. So again, we'd have to wait for the autopsy, which normally in a situation like this, next day it's getting done. You know what I'm saying? Right. Even we had the medical examiners show up to the scene, and they really couldn't tell on scene what happened to her. We did see some bruising around her face and several parts of her body, but that was it.
Now, if somebody cleans up all the blood where you can't see it and only comes up, what was the check?
Luminol.
Can you still get DNA from that or no?
Nah, see, the luminol, that small amount of blood, you can still swab it. Okay. And if you're lucky, you'll get DNA. But at this point, whose DNA were we looking for? Cynthia's? We knew that was going to be there.
Right.
Hopefully, Keoki's. We didn't know, but we still tried. You know what I mean? So go ahead.
Yeah. So if I'm not a cop, but then the next thing I would probably do is tell Keoki, hey, we found Cynthia, and see how he reacts.
So that's what we did in a roundabout way. We didn't tell her we found Cynthia.
Okay.
We told him that we know he's lying and that he was at Cynthia's house on the 24th because we got his lift subpoena back. So he initially, starts lying. He's like, yeah, I went up there to collect money.
So, okay.
Well, then if you went up there to collect money, then why is she paying you with a cash app at 3 a.m?
So things are starting to just not make sense.
It's not making sense, right? And at this point, I think any reasonable person would say, you guys probably have enough to charge him, right? He's lying about being there. He says he walks back. initially back home. He says, I get a Lyft ride to Cynthia's house.
Right.
She pays me my money. I walk back home.
Right. But just because someone's a liar doesn't make them
doesn't make him a killer, but the circumstances aren't looking good for him. So because here's what we got now. Now we confront him again. We're like, no, we have video of you dropping that car off, or in the area where that car was. And he's like, oh yeah, well you know what? I forgot. She told me to drive it over there and just leave it there.
Even though you did not have video.
No, we had a video. Remember I told you
of
we had
walking
a video
away.
of a person walking in that area that matched his description.
Right, but not driving.
No, not driving.
He admitted to that.
Yeah. He's like, oh, no, she told me to drive it over there and leave it there.
Okay. So,
and his explanation was a little odd on that. He was...
we'll just kind of... where we left off. So, he said that he drove... She told him to drive the car.
So now you have a lot of circumstances that would tell you, okay, Cynthia Cole's been murdered because her body's dumped in a septic tank.
Right.
Her phone is missing, and the last place that we have a GPS location is near Keoki Demick's residence.
Okay.
Also near Keoki Demick's residence, we found her vehicle, which we didn't know he had driven because we didn't know that at the time. We also get subpoenas back that he did get a Lyft ride up to her house at around 7 in the afternoon prior to her getting to her house around 8 when she was last seen at Jammin' and Jensen.
Right.
So we can prove that he was there at the time she went missing.
Okay.
And we also have the Cash App transaction that he lied about, right? And when he got questioned about the vehicle, he put himself in that car. We didn't do that, He's the one that said, she told me to drive the car there and leave it there, and had no other explanation as to why.
Right.
Well, I will tell you this, that forthcoming guy now was not so forthcoming.
So he kind of shelled in.
Yeah, he put himself in a box by his own doing, and when he realized that the gig was up and that we had found her body, he actually lawyered up at that time.
Oh, so he did get a lawyer.
Yeah, at that time, he's like, I want to talk to my attorney.
Okay. And then, so I know when you get an attorney or when you get a lawyer, they basically say, don't talk.
Yeah, no.
So did he just stop talking?
So, he stopped talking for a little bit from that goes. But you know what? Like prior to that, we kind of had his mindset. We had talked to him prior to that before him asking for an attorney. And he had expressed, some really interesting feelings towards Cynthia Cole himself.
Okay. It's kind of explain further.
Yeah. So he had said that she was like a mother to him.
Okay.
He's like, I wanted a romantic relationship with her, but she never gave me that. We asked him if he ever got frustrated with her based on that.
So he was sexually attracted.
100%. He was physically attracted. He said he would get frustrated with her because that's what he wanted, but she didn't want that. And she would explain to him, "You're like a son to me," right?
Okay.
So those are the things that were kind of coming out that also led to.
This is as he's lawyered up or no?
No, this is prior to him lawyering up. This is all along the way what he's saying to us that he feels like is like a mother. He wants to find her. Never had any relationship to her. Mm-hmm. He started opening up towards the end that maybe he did want one, but it was never going to happen, and that he was okay with that.
Okay.
But it was obviously with all the circumstances, we were able to charge him. The state attorney's office was there with us the entire time, and we did charge him with a homicide of Cynthia Cole.
Okay. So at this time, when you charge him, he still hasn't confessed, correct?
No, he still has not confessed.
Okay. So, as you know, it's all, correct me if I'm wrong. So at this point, it's all circumstantial.
Yeah, everything we have is based on circumstance, right?
Right.
On like I told you before, we went over it already. The Lyft records, the lying, the new phone, her phone going missing. We actually have a body now. We're not just saying, hey, there's nothing to show.
So deep down, you almost kind of know that he has something to do with it. But as you know, in court.
Episode 3. Coming soon. The verdict, closure, and aftermath.